All right. Last one was not my last one, so we'll try it again. Um, this time, I think I'm going to talk about some music, and I'm actually going to talk about music. I'm not going to do like an immediate pivot to my religious beliefs or lack thereof. So we'll do a music recommendation video. I have almost everything in front of me here, so I'll just kind of do a quick rundown of some stuff that I really like, stuff that I listen to a lot. I'm going to start with this, and this is new. I do have the LP of this new Boojums record that came out late last year. This is just a postcard single of an awesome song from the record called Wings of Fire. They're a Canadian rock band, I guess I would say. I love every song on the album. I've listened to that a ton since it came out. I would definitely recommend it. They've got some really cool live YouTube videos. Otherwise, I'm sure you can still get the LP on Bandcamp. Really good. I would definitely recommend the Boojums to anybody that likes good music, good rock music. Awesome stuff. Next one, and this is the only David Lindley album that I have on vinyl. It's probably not my favorite of his. Very Greasy is probably my favorite, but this is kind of the starting point for me getting into him. Well, really, the starting point was his stuff with Jackson Browne, but I really love this record. It's kind of got a reggae feel, and Lindley could play about anything, you know. So if you're kind of into, reggae music, string music, I would definitely recommend checking out David Lindley in general, but specifically today I'm recommending El Rayo X. Really good stuff. No skips. No skips. All right, let me put this back over here. Okay, the next one I will talk about is an album by the Weakerthans called Reconstruction Site. This is probably one of the most important albums of my life. It has been with me through ups and downs and, grief and triumph, and it always just seems to speak to me in whatever way that I need at that time. I gravitate towards it more in the winter time, but really it's just solid all the way through. And I love this record, The Weakerthans, Reconstruction Site. All right, next, I'm going to move on to what I think is underappreciated, underrated. This is the Kiss Paul Stanley solo album. They came out with the Four, and everyone always talks about Ace. Rest in peace, Ace. I love Ace. But that Paul Stanley solo album, for me, it just appeals to me so much more. That is the Kiss sound, is Paul's voice, his melodies, his hooks. And with the exception of the single, Hold Me, Touch Me, Think of Me, When We're Apart, which really, that song stinks. But everything else on here I think is awesome. Tonight You Belong to Me, Move On, Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, Goodbye. Really solid, melodic rock music. Paul Stanley, maybe he's not the man anymore. I don't know, but he was, and this album rocks. All right, let's see. I've got a couple more here. We'll go to Paul and Linda McCartney, Ram. I am a huge Paul McCartney fan. I love the Beatles, of course, but for me, Paul, his solo music, his stuff with Wings, his stuff with Linda, I love most of it. And this was really the first album that I got into of his, Ram. My grandpa introduced me to this, and again, just no skips. The sound, the recording techniques. The way that Paul and Linda work together, is fantastic. Her voice sounds so beautiful on this record, and really, I think I've seen a video that kind of calls this like the first indie album or whatever. I can't speak to that. But some really lo-fi cool stuff. Paul and Linda McCartney, Ram. I do want to give a shout out to a podcast that really took me on my deep McCartney dive called Take It Away. It's not as active anymore. They got through the whole Paul catalog. One of the co-hosts unfortunately passed away years back, but Chris Mercer and Ryan Brady, I cannot thank those guys enough for guiding me through a fantastic journey of what has ended up being, an artist that I will love until the end of my life. So shout out to Take It Away. Shout out Paul McCartney. All right, the last album that I have in front of me, I'm going to talk about is Monster Magnet, Spine of God. I am a big fan of Monster Magnet. I think Dave Windorf is just the man. I really like everything they've released, but particularly some of these earlier albums, just the sound that they had cultivated, Dave's lyrics, they just speak to me. They're cosmic and they're weird, and, everything that I think is cool seems to fall in line with everything that Dave Windorf thinks is cool. And this band, just tremendous, super underrated, New Jersey band. I heard about them. Well, I was familiar with them actually from some of their music from Four-Way Diablo was on some Viva La Bam episodes when I was a kid, but I didn't know who that was, but I always loved that music. And I really got into Monster Magnet thanks to the Tell 'em Steve Dave podcast and Dave being on there and just being cool as hell. So Monster Magnet, awesome hard rock from New Jersey, underrated. I think they're working on a new album, and I'll be the first in line. Love Monster Magnet. Now the last album I'll talk about, I don't have in front of me. I actually don't have it on vinyl. I only have it on cassette, and it's in my 2001 Subaru in the tape player because I've hardly taken it out for 3 to 4 months, and that is Billy Joel's album The Stranger. I never considered myself a Billy Joel fan. I always thought his music was kind of lame, but you know how it is, an album or a movie or something just hits you at the right time, and for me that was The Stranger. I don't know what was going on. I'd had it on tape that somebody had given me. I actually have a bunch of Billy Joel on cassette, and I've tried to listen to more of it, and for me, The Stranger is perfect, and the rest of it, I just don't think is for me. So I would highly recommend checking out The Stranger by Billy Joel. It's a perfect album. It's great for driving around, cold weather, beautiful playing. His voice sounds so good. And again, I wish I had the tape in front of me, but it hasn't left my car in quite some time, and it won't because I listen to it about every day. So those are just a few music recommendations from me. Like I've said before, I don't think that my brain is all that analytical. I just like stuff. I like music, I like movies, and I wanted to share that with the world, that Monster Magnet rules. All right, that's all. We'll see you later.